Good evening, everybody. How are you? Exhausted. Apparently, a lot of people are exhausted. They just not here tonight, I guess. I know a few people are sick, but so we want to remember them in our prayers. Well, that rain, I'll do it. That rain will keep people home, won't it? Mm-mm. Ooh, boy, they ain't even raining right now. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. I hope you've had an awesome day. And I hope tonight's class will be good for us, beneficial to us. Let's see how far we're going to get tonight. First Peter chapter number 3. First Peter chapter number 3. What are we on? About 10? We're on verse number 10. Second Peter. Nope.
Third.
First Peter 3. What?
Yep.
Okay.
Peter 3.
Yeah, let's read 8 and 9 again. We talked a lot about that. Because this leads into 10, 11, and 12. So let's see. Finally, all of you Christians, you, the church that I'm writing to, be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tenderhearted, be courteous. And remember, we said this is the idea of Christians submitting to one another, and that's following the theme that has been laid out so far. And he says in verse 9, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, or you might see insult for insult, something like that. But on the contrary, blessing. So give blessings when someone gives you evil or reviling. Knowing, he says, that you were called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. Okay. And then what he does is quote an Old Testament verse. And this comes out of Psalm 34. So 10 through 12, let's read. He says, he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers, but the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Okay. If you were to go, so it's Psalm 34, and if you were to go back, this is always good to do when you read through the New Testament, and boom, you see, and most of us have footnotes and things like that, or it tells us that, hey, this is from Psalm 34. Or it's not even really hard to look up nowadays. But when you see, this is a pretty big quote out of the Old Testament, you want to go back and read Psalm 34. That'd be our first thought. Let me go back and see what Psalm 34 is all about. Maybe there's a reason why it's quoting it. And I would say that there is, because that psalm, when you read through it, is about God not abandoning his people who are suffering from their own specific thing, suffering from some kind of oppression or persecution. And the psalm is about God not giving up on them, God not leading them to their own devices. And Psalm 34 verse 1 begins, I will bless the Lord at all times. All times. So does all mean all there? Does he actually mean only the good times? Is that when God's going to bless us? Or is he going to bless us in the bad times? Is he going to bless us when people, now think you're one of these Christians that Peter's writing to, is God going to still bless me even when people are giving me a hard time and it really doesn't seem like I'm getting any blessings at all? Yeah. And I think that's probably why he quotes Psalm 34. Remember, we said not long ago, I'm not sure if this applies to every single Old Testament quote, but a lot of times, maybe it does, a lot of times when, like, he pulls out, 3 or 4 or 5 verses here, 3 verses. A lot of times the New Testament writer is not just quoting that one particular verse or passage. He's quoting the whole context, and the writer is wanting the reader to bring the whole context over to help them understand why he's quoting this particular thing. And I think this goes for this right here. And so verse 10, it's mainly about, so the last part of it is mainly about what? If you could give it in one word, it's about what? The last part, let's say 10b. You had to sum it up. Sum up 10b with one word. You would say this is about, okay, the tongue. Okay. And then, so do the same thing with verse 11. Sum it up in one word. So 10's about our tongue, about our words, or our speech, whatever you want to say. And then in verse 11 is about, not quite our tongue, it's about our what?
This is evil. Yeah.
Well, it's not about our, well, I mean, it is about it. Okay, so, okay, avoiding evil. Somebody else got something? What's that?
Flee from evil.
Okay, fleeing from it. So we can take all of these things and we can say that it's about our actions, right? About our behavior. Would that fit? Yeah, with all of y'all's answers and put them together, we say, boom, it's about our action. So we've got words, but our words are our speech, our tongue, and then our action, which are two, I mean, they're kind of connected, but they're two separate things, right? Because both, I'm doing this right here as my tongue and then my actions, they both got to be right. I can't just hone on one and get one right and not do the other, right? Got to do both. So this idea of turning from evil, the key word is turn there, turning away from evil, it's an ongoing process. So all of us, every single day, we live in this world, and so we know the things that we encounter and we see with our eyes and we hear with our ears. So we see it all the time and we hear it all the time. We're around some things that we don't really care to be around. And so we're always making sure we're turning away from those things. Does that make sense? So this is an ongoing process, right? Always doing it. Every day. And then he says, in verse 11 there, let him seek peace and pursue it. If you want peace, and I don't think this is a peace of mind, I think this is peace with other people. Peace with other people, well, I think will lead to peace of mind, but it doesn't happen by accident. Does it really? Especially when you might have some enemies. You might have some people that just don't really like you. Maybe don't really, I mean, they're friendly, but they're like, yeah. So peace don't happen by accident, folks. It takes effort. That's my stand on it. It takes effort. We got to pursue. That's why it says pursue it. And there's some things we have to be actively involved in trying to seek peace with people. And boy, don't you know that's hard when they would be giving you evil and reviling you and insulting you, right? Yep. So our lives, the Christian life, has to revolve around God. And Jesus Christ has got to be the center of our universe if this is going to happen. If we're going to have peace with people, even our enemies, and which is possible, and if we're going to have peace of mind in the middle of all of our troubles and all of this and all of that, then, our lives have to revolve around the right thing, the right sun. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm preaching to the choir, aren't I? Well, but it's good to ask myself sometimes, what exactly, in the last week or the last month, what exactly is my life revolving around? Because can't we get off track, out of orbit? Keep that going. Can't we?
Yeah. Yes.
We can. So it's good to be like, all right, oh, hold up, Chuck. Make sure that my life is revolving around the right things, the right person. Okay. So now it's verse number 12. We like to, I don't think we take it out of context, but we really don't read this verse except when we're doing one thing, and it's to show, well, you can't say a prayer to be saved. You can't say a prayer to enter into Jesus Christ for salvation. It's a beautiful verse for that. But I'm not really going to talk a lot about it unless you guys want to. You guys and you ladies want to talk about it. I'm more interested in why he put it there in the first place. So from verse 12, it pays to seek to do God's will in all things. It pays to be, you go back to chapter 1, it pays to be holy in all of our conduct, because Peter says God is listening to those people. He's listening to the prayers of those people. So I want to be one of those people, right? I want to be considered by God. I don't care what other people, what they would consider me. Would they label me righteous or unrighteous? It doesn't matter. What would God label me as? How would God see me? Maybe label's not a right word for God. How would God view me? Righteous or unrighteous? I want to make sure I'm righteous so God can listen to my prayers. Or will listen to my prayers. So God listens to the prayers of those who seek to do his will. Yes? And Peter, I think, here's why maybe Peter put it in here. Let's see if you agree with me. That if they are suffering, he's reminding his readers, look, if you're going through suffering, if people are treating you as the way people are treating you, verse 9 there, or if you're about to go into some suffering that you're not really aware of yet, but it's coming and you're being reviled and you're being insulted, it does not mean that you're evil, that you're unright. It doesn't mean that God isn't listening to you, faithful Christian. It doesn't mean that God isn't with you, faithful Christian. But it might feel that way. And I think that's why he says, hey, look, you just keep, you're going to get this evil treatment from people. But look, you do what you're supposed to be doing. You keep on the right track. You don't fall, you don't stoop to their level. You bless them. And even though things might not turn around right away, don't think that God's not listening to your prayers. Go ahead, Dean.
I almost look at it and think that it's a reminder that, like the whole idea of how the rain falls on the just and the unjust.
Oh yeah.
They going through their persecution might see evildoers being blessed with riches and whatever else that they want.
Oh yeah.
And to me, I see maybe this is a reminder like, hey, they're going to get stuff because that's just how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a coincidence for them.
Mm-hmm.
You are a child of mine, and I will listen to your prayers, and you will get what you need.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And
I'm not answering their prayers. They're just getting it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will answer your prayers.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody want to add to that? If you go to Psalm 34, back to Psalm 34, remember this is who he's quoting. He doesn't quote this. I tend to think though that these Christians, any Christians would have had, if they were Gentiles and they weren't as familiar with the Old Testament scriptures, the Old Testament scriptures would have been extremely important to them. Very, very important to them. So they would have been at least studying the Old Testament scriptures, and they would have, I'm assuming maybe that's a bad thing to do, but here it is a bad thing to do a lot of times, but that they would have known of Psalm 34, could get their hands on Psalm 34. And right after he says, their eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, ears open to their prayer, or their cry. And then the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. the very next verse, Psalm 34:17, says exactly kind of what I think is the reason why Peter put this in here. He says, the righteous cry out and the Lord hears. So don't think the opposite. And delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart and save such as have a contrite spirit. Verse 19 says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. And that's the message that is being given to these Christians here from this chapter. Do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, and correct me if I have the wrong understanding of this, but I feel like, it's my understanding that at the time, like they didn't have the Bible like we have the whole thing just right there, and you just flip to it and you can search for things on your phone and all that sorcery. But I think, so they would have had to rely on, a lot of oral tradition and a lot of memorization. I think when they're studying, and maybe not every person, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think every person was taught to read and write. So, a lot of the teaching would have been oral and then a lot of memorization. So it's my understanding that when they're memorizing things like the Psalms, that the first line of the Psalm was often meant to remind them of the whole Psalm.
Yep.
So I think that, or maybe you're the one that told me that, I don't know. But
yeah, right.
Probably.
No,
but so like when he quotes like a small section of it, I think, yeah, that's what I was thinking, that it would have called to mind maybe the whole psalm if they.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Especially the Jews. I don't know about the Gentiles, but.
Yeah. And you have to remember too that I didn't plan on going off on this, but what did the first century church have until the New Testament came around? The completed New Testament. What?
Scrolls of the Old Testament.
Oh, well, something even better than that. Okay, they had the apostles. They had miraculous gifts, and part of their which was given by the apostles. So part of their miraculous gifts would have been miraculous knowledge, and then you have, prophesying and all this stuff. And so a lot of that. I don't know how all that works. Nobody knows how all that actually worked. Their miraculous faith and miraculous knowledge and things like that. And so that would have helped them, like the reading and the writing, and maybe if they didn't have a scroll, they didn't have Psalm 34. Could somebody with the miraculous gift of knowledge just spit out Psalm 34 right off the bat? Probably could. All right, so does that make sense why he would quote that song in the context of 1 Peter and in the context of 34? Okay. Any questions before we move on from it? Don't have to be on this thing. Anything at all? Okay. 13 and 14 says that, and who is he who will harm you if you become followers of what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed, and do not be afraid of their threats nor be troubled. And he quotes Isaiah there. Isaiah 8:12. So generally speaking, under normal circumstances, okay, faithful Christians, and that would be someone who is a follower of what is good. And that would be, I would say, doing exactly what verse 9 says that they ought to do. Faithful Christians are not putting themselves in positions, and I think we talked about this when we were going over chapter 2, maybe, where they're not going to put themselves in positions where other people are constantly going to be doing them harm. Just generally speaking. Does that make sense? So if I'm a faithful Christian, and I'm walking out here, and I'm living my life, I'm doing my job, and, raising my family, and just trying to be a good citizen, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna be careful with the company that I keep. All right, so I don't get harmed in that way from whatever may arise from keeping bad company. I'm going to choose as a faithful Christian to to not participate in things I don't need to be participating in. That's going to keep more trouble out of my life. I'm going to choose not to go certain places. That's going to keep more trouble. I'm going to choose my words very carefully, and I'm going to say wise things and not cause trouble with my words. That's going to keep me out of more trouble. And then if my overall goal as far as mankind is concerned is obviously I want to teach people the truth, the gospel, but I'm also going to seek peace with whoever. I don't care who you are. I'm going to try to seek peace with you. Verse 11 there. Then, well, that faithful Christian is doing all the things. I mean, they're going to be a peacemaker more than anything else. And there's a whole lot less trouble going to come their way. Now, does that make sense? Right? So generally speaking, faithful followers of what is good are, generally speaking, are going to just have to deal with a lot less in the world than some other people who are not trying to do that. You following me? Okay. Peacemakers. Peacemakers. We're trying to be peacemakers. All of us trying to be peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers, Jesus said, for they shall be called sons of God. Sounds pretty good. That's Matthew 5:9. Sounds like a pretty good blessing. I want God to be looking at me as a son of his, a child of his. Well, I'm going to need to be a peacemaker. And so here's the thing. You know, Christians need to be good friends to people. Christians need to be good neighbors to people. Christians need to be good citizens to people. Well, just good citizens. I guess you don't do that to people. I guess you do to people. Christians need to be likable people, just in general. Don't you think?
Yeah.
And if we're not at least pursuing that, look, it might be hard. Sometimes people got the personality where they can get along with rocks. Great. Everybody else, not so much. And then some people got personality, they can get along with anybody. But it should be a goal of ours. We seek this peace. We try to get along with everybody. You know, and a lot of times that's gonna be like, you know, getting slapped on the cheek, you know, getting the other one. And we got 4 days. But people aren't willing to do that. A lot of Christians aren't willing to do that, are they? Are they? No, not a lot of them are.
It's easier to talk Christ to somebody you get along with than it is to be a fight with somebody and then try to teach them Christ. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And all this stuff right here you just brought up, if you're a Christian, it's easy to do these things and present yourself as Christ, because you're supposed to be different from the world. But if I come to you and start arguing with you or talk, you ain't gonna sit and listen to the Bible with you.
No.
I mean,
No.
common sense tells you that.
Yeah, so, and just, you know, we're trying to remember, we're trying to be holy. Holy because God is holy, and that, I know, that seems like a tall order, but it's not impossible. And then you get to verse 14, he said, but even if, look, you just try to be peaceful and you treat people with respect, and even if they're trying to break you down or whatever, and you're probably not going to deal with a lot, but if you do deal with it, if suffering does come your way as a consequence of you just trying to be a godly, a holy Christian, then he's saying, you should count yourself blessed. Now, that's one of these things, that's a tall order, just to get into that way of thinking, don't you think? I mean, I think, and this is the thing, this is not like flip the light switch kind of thing. Like all of a sudden, I got it, God. all my suffering is good for me, and I'm blessed. Thank you. I should have known. I wish I had known that a long time ago. And then the whole next day is all so different. Doesn't quite work that way, does it? So just like a lot of things, a lot of mindsets in Christianity is one big mindset, but a lot of little things go into it. It's a learned behavior. This is a learned behavior kind of thing. And so it's okay if you're reading this or you're thinking about us talking about it, and you're like, yeah, that's hard to do because I've tried it and it didn't work when I tried it. It's okay to think this is going to be difficult. Well, God didn't say this was going to be easy. He just said this is going to be right for you. And I don't think we're trying to so how do we do it? I don't think we're supposed to be tricking ourselves, into believing a lie or anything like that. This is true. Verse 14 is true. If you suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed. That's a truth. It's just it's just that we guys are trying to wrap our brains around it. And the world doesn't really we don't grow up being taught these things. Not in a spiritual way, anyways. Not anything that's worth the end goal being, like heaven or pleasing God or anything like that. We might get taught, work hard and you're gonna fail and you're gonna suffer through things and people are gonna take advantage of you and they rip you off and this like that. You just keep plugging at your idea and then you'll have success and okay, you'll be blessed. I guess we get that from the world. But we don't get this perspective of it. Not from the world. If you had godly parents that raised you up like this and was telling you that, you're going to come across people who do not like you. Not because of the way you look, not because of the way you dress. It is simply because you are trying to be a faithful Christian. And you're going to meet people who just look at you differently. That's why I don't really like telling people I'm a preacher. For two reasons. One, all of a sudden people get religious around me. And when they weren't religious at all at the beginning. So that's really weird. You don't have to just invoke God's name all the time now that you know that I preach somewhere. I'm just a Christian, like you say you are, And then two, there's a lot of preconceived ideas about preachers, which, can't help it. That's going to happen. So this is a learned behavior. We got to learn to do this. And if you haven't started already, you should probably go ahead. Let's just mark it down. It's 7:35 on Wednesday night. You can start now. Start now to try to get into this mindset. It's no different than Paul. We're supposed to be content with life. Are we content? Is everybody content here? I hope to say yes. I hope you say yes. But a lot of us might not be like, no, not really.
I would be optimistic.
Okay, yeah. Optimistic is good.
I don't dwell on things I can't control,
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I've got that word written on my board in the kitchen because I want to preach on optimism at some point in the future. But yeah, that's a good way to be. Glass half full kind of person. Yeah, that helps, I think. But I think it's a learned behavior. Paul said in Philippians 3, he had to learn to be content. Philippians 4, he had to learn to be content. It's like, I have all these things I've gone through, I have learned to be this way. Well, we sometimes put Paul up on this pedestal. We're like, great, man, I would love to be, have his mindset. There's just no way I can reach there. Well, guess what? Paul wasn't there all of a sudden either. Even when he became an apostle, he wasn't there where we finally see Paul end up. And so don't beat yourself up because you're not a Paul. or you're not a whoever in the Bible you look up to. Paul had to learn, so can we. And so we can learn to count ourselves blessed if we suffer for the faith. And I'm not so sure how. I mean, do y'all suffer for your faith? Probably not like, nobody's getting fed to lions or anything.
I like to be in the first century.
Yeah.
We're blessed to live in a country that we don't have to worry about being persecuted for our religion.
Yeah. We don't, who, has anyone ever lived like, who didn't grow up around here? I know you two didn't. You didn't grow up around here. You didn't grow up around here. Like, who didn't grow up in Tennessee? You didn't grow up. Okay, we got a few. Who didn't grow up in the South? Okay, just one. So basically, who didn't grow up in the Bible Belt?
That'd be us Northerners here.
Yankees over here.
Technically, my childhood home is below the Mason-Dixon lines, but
Okay.
easily.
Okay. Who grew up in big cities? Anybody grew up in a big city? So what I'm trying to get is that not only do we live in a great country that affords us all these religious liberties, but we live in the Bible Belt. And even though, we don't get a lot of backlash for our faith, because what do? Normally, we just go around and we consider ourselves Christians. Well, guess what? Probably 95% of the population around here does. They do too. Now, of course, you get into some nitty-gritty stuff about doctrine and whatnot, find out that a lot of people walk around here lost. They don't even know it, but they, for the most part, you're not going outside battling your employers all the time over faith. Maybe. But if it were to ever come, and so this is where it helps to remember who we're talking about, remember who the audience really is, and that it does still happen. This kind of persecution does happen in the world today. I just got this email from someone overseas. I think it's in India. They send out so many emails, those guys over there. But the things that they're always requesting prayer. They want money as well. And I understand that. So if any of them are watching, which they do watch, we get that. Everybody, you gotta have money to do great things for the Lord. This is the world we live in. But one thing they were asking, their orphanages are big over there. A lot of orphans in India. And they're like, please pray for the effort for our orphanages being built. Child trafficking, I think was one, was a big thing over there. And organ harvesting. I've never got a prayer request that had to deal with organ harvesting. Imagine living in a place where I think it said something like, if you leave your daughter alone for 20 minutes, you'll never see her again. That's that bad over there. And if you do, she might be missing a kidney and you get her back. That is crazy. Yeah, see, we don't really deal with that kind of stuff in Mount City. So we know that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't really like talking about it, but we know that because some people are so evil in the world. But it kind of puts things into perspective when trying to be a Christian over there and doing the right thing and trying to follow this stuff, and then we realize, well, you know what? Well, hopefully we realize over here, like, you know what? I think I could do this. Actually, now that I think about it, it's going to be a lot easier than I thought to do this.
Chuck, this verse 20 in the second chapter, can we associate it with 14, 15, what we're talking about now? Verse 20.
Yeah, I think so. Probably more verse 17. 17 and 20 are kind of similar. 17 of chapter 2 and 20 of verse 20 of chapter 2 and verse 17 of chapter 3 are pretty similar. Yeah, so yeah, he's kind of repeating some things. And so we don't have to, and so these Christians, and neither do we, if we ever find ourselves in such a persecution, we don't, there's no good reason for us to be, he says this at the end of verse 14, don't be afraid, don't be scared, there's no reason to worry. And the reason is because no one can ever do real harm to your soul, right? You are in control of your soul, and that's what matters the most. And you're in control of it because you have decided to let God's word guide your life. You decided to be holy. 115. Christians are able to see the big picture. Well, we're supposed to be able to see the big picture and look past our sufferings to something better. You know, kind of over the mountain kind of thing. See off in the distance, man, it looks great over there, even though it's like storm clouds on my head. You walk around with a storm cloud on your head, you know, that little cartoon kind of thing. So we look at it, so we look past our sufferings, or we're in our sufferings and we see them differently. We look at them differently. Christians look very differently at sufferings and troubles and things like that than other people do. And that allows Christians to deal with them in an appropriate way, whether it's just something that happens to us and we can't help it, or whether it's actual people giving us problems. We got people problems. If you think about athletes, I remember Michael Jordan, basketball guy. It was game 6, I think, of the finals, and he had like a stomach flu or something, supposedly. Anyway, he was sick, and he played through it. Had an amazing game, won the game for him, and all that, Chicago Bulls. Okay, and I think somebody played through the Super Bowl or something. Was there a quarterback? It's probably in the last 5 years, or a quarterback played through the Super Bowl and he had a broken ankle or something, or he was messed up, but he kept playing. And I think he won, and something like that. Okay, so my point is that athletes, they're willing to put up with suffering because they see the bigger picture. And they got the goal, they're going to win, and they don't care how painful it is. They're going to go through it, aren't they? And athletes who care, because they got the big picture in mind. Take them off the field, you get stomach bug? No, you ain't doing nothing. You break your ankle? No, I'm not doing all that. I'm not going training, I'm not practicing, whatever. I got a broken ankle. That's because the big picture is off the table now. It's not the Super Bowl, it's not the championship or whatever. The same thing goes for Christians striving. What is always on the table for us is heaven, right? And so, like, that's it, man. We're in the big game. And so what are we willing to put up with? What are we willing to just get through so we can get to the other side and win the crown that never perishes? Right? You with me? Okay. Let me end with this. Sufferings and persecution might come to you, but God is still able to make all things work together for good. And that's because you love God. That's Romans 8:28. All right. We'll pick up verse 15 next time we meet. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.